welcome everyone once again to Live from My Drum Room. Today's episode, Track Talk with Steve Gadd. I'm so excited to have Steve here with me today, and we're going to do a deep dive into a legendary track, one of many that Steve has recorded. And it was kind of hard to pick one, but this one kind of seemed like the obvious one, at least to start with. So with that in mind, and without any further ado, please welcome my guest, my friend, my hero, the legendary Steve Gadd. Hi, Steve.
How you doing, Jen?
I'm doing great. I'm great. How you doing?
I'm good. You know,
Asia, an incredible recording. And Steve, I'm going to just jump in and ask you a couple of questions because I know you remember this like it was yesterday.
are you gonna play the track?
Yes,
Are you gonna play the whole track or just the end of it?
I was going to play bits and pieces of it and mostly the end of it.
Well, you know what? I think the whole track. It's the whole track is and how it gets from one place to the other is
Yeah,
so.
that's fine, Steve.
When I hear the whole thing, it makes a lot more sense musically.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Or at least part of the beginning, those themes and things.
yeah. Should we jump right in?
Huh?
Should we jump right in?
Yeah, I mean, do you mind? Do you
Are you
normally
kidding?
not
Not at
play the
all.
whole track?
Not at all. I'll play it. I won't play it too loud so we can even talk and be heard over it too.
But
If
some of the parts, some of the when I listen back, like I'm really proud of the way the whole song went. I mean, everyone just talks about the end,
yeah,
but the beginning part is really what they wrote. They're great. They're great songwriters, you know.
absolutely. I would
And
totally agree. Yeah, I know what you're saying. Especially drummers fixate on the two solos and but the
the
whole
whole
thing.
thing was very challenging musically
Yeah,
to so and the first part is beautiful.
absolutely. Yeah. Someone said, "Let him talk."
Up on the hill, people never stand. They just don't care.
That's Victor Feldman playing marimba.
Chinese music under banyan tree. Here at the
It feels real smooth but it's what there were a lot of little odd little phrases and stuff that
Yeah.
when all my time dancing is
Can I stop it for 1 second, Steve?
I run to.
Can I
yeah.
just stop it? And we'll go back to it. But okay, so here's something I've always wanted to ask you. That section in particular, did they have that written as a cross stick part on the chart, or did you come up with that idea of? I mean, it makes perfect sense to play it as a cross stick.
I don't I'm not they didn't the f- as I remember the roadmap was there. I don't know if it said cross stick.
Yeah.
That's just when I hear it back, when I listen to it back, it's like hearing it for the first time. And I mean, it's natural to go to cross stick, for
Yeah.
me.
Yep.
So it was, there was there wasn't a lot of talk about, what to do before we played it. I just think we let the music play us. But look,
Yeah. Okay. I'll resume it. Yep. Gotcha.
Up on the hill, they've got time to burn.
The first part was really, I hear it, it's real spacey. It's
Yeah.
a lot of open.
Double helix in the sky tonight. Blow out the hardware. Let's do it right. Asia, when all my dying dancing is through, I run to you.
Man. Yeah, this section is
These sections were even more trickier than the end. You know what I mean? The phrases are all over the place.
yeah. Many of us have heard this song so many times we can memorize this part, but you've seen it for the first time. Those accents.
Up on the hill, they think I'm okay, or so they say.
Chuck's playing is unbelievable.
You know, I haven't listened
Wow.
to that like that, but the first parts of that thing are challenging too. You know what I mean? And when I listen to the whole thing, that last thing is such a detachment from the rest of the thing. These guys are great composers. You know, it really,
Absolutely.
and you know, I haven't said thank you enough for being called to play on that because it really, and the fact that, you know, that was I was on the same track with Wayne Shorter. I
Yeah.
mean, you know,
Yeah.
and
But you didn't know it at the time, Steve, right? You didn't know they were going to
no,
overdub Wayne's part.
no, I didn't
Yeah.
know, you know, but uh,
I
you know, those guys are really
geniuses.
great
Yeah. Yeah.
geniuses, really, and I just I have to say thank you, man, really, because
Yeah.
it was an incredible piece of music to be a part of.
Yeah. And I'm sure they thank you for what you did for that too, because I know they had a lot of different people come in and play that, as you've talked about, in different bands
Well,
with.
I've heard, you know, I heard that stuff. You know what I mean? I never
Yeah.
really heard it from Donald or Walter, but you know, I heard you know, you hear things before you go in to do the thing. But yeah, you know, eh, the right place at the right time.
Which, yeah, and they were famous for that. I know that the same record, Asia had Peg, and a lot of Josie, and a lot of great songs on it. And I know that a few different people cut Peg, and they kept Rick's version. Our friend Rick Murata, and Jim Keltner's on Josie, and
Rick, who was it? You said Rick?
Maraca.
Oh, yeah.
And no,
And
but I when you say that's part of their genius too, is they knew kind of how to get the best out of everybody. And I mean, they had this idea to bring you in to do that track. They weren't, and I'm sure there were some great other versions of it with other great drummers, but you were the special sauce for that. That what we hear now. That's it's
yeah,
magical.
they had something that they were going for that. And, you know, sometimes when you try to get someone to do something musically and describe what you want with words, it doesn't translate. So, you know, it's hard to, but once you know, get a line of where, when you can communicate and, you know, touch on really what it is they're looking for, then
Yeah.
it really starts to make sense musically, you know?
Yeah. And Steve, do you remember if were you because at the time, 1977, you were living in New York, but I know you worked a lot in LA, but mostly in New York in those days, and you were working so much. Were you in LA doing something else, and they
Yeah,
knew you were in
I think
town? Yeah.
yeah, what would happen when I would go to LA, I'd get called to go out and do a project, you know, and I'd let friends know I was coming out, or word would get out. You know, it's a word of mouth business that, you know, different people that I was in town,
Mm,
and so you know, they would try to, you know, schedule some sessions while I was there.
sure. Yeah.
And you know, it was, I liked that. I mean, it would give me a chance to meet some other players and play some other music.
Yeah. And yeah, and why not? I mean, if you're out there, it saves you going back to New York and getting a call to come back out 2 weeks later.
Right.
To record again. So yeah, so that was kind of by happenstance. They knew you were in town. Cause was it? I wouldn't say last minute, but was it sort of like that where like you didn't have really much notice? You got the call to do it.
Yeah, I was, you know, it was sort of last minute, you know, but it was exciting, and I didn't know the people that were hiring me, but other people that were in the business knew who they were
Yeah,
and how good they were. So, and So I heard that information and, before I met those guys. So I was excited to to have the opportunity.
Yeah. And your reading at that time, I mean, it's that had to have been such a major plus for you to be able to come in there and just really effortlessly get through that crazy three music stands worth of music, right? It was in the
Yeah,
chart like,
well, my reading, my reading improves by the amount that I do. So back in those days, I mean, I had come out of 5 years of college and 3 years in the Army, and I was in Eastman, so there was
yeah,
a lot of playing there, orchestras and wind ensembles and big band, and then I was working in clubs. And then when I went in the Army, I ended up in a big band and they had arrangers in it that were writing new arrangements. So I was sight reading every day,
yeah, yeah,
so yeah, I was ready,
yeah.
I was, that's what I had been, that's what I had trained for, soldier.
And you were reporting for duty. Hey, I have to tell you, I don't want to take away from our this very important conversation, but our friend Yard is watching,
Oh,
and I want to say hello to Yard over in our friend Yard Gavrilovich,
yard.
the legendary, um, your drum tech. But
Belated happy birthday too.
yeah, that's right. Back in December.
Mhm.
Um, so the session was at Village Recorders in L.A. Now this is a tough one, I know. Do you remember? Did you have a drum set out there that you were able to use, or did they provide drums? Was there a kit in the studio that other drummers were using?
I think there was a kit
There
there.
was a kit there. Okay, all right.
I might have brought my snare drum and cymbals, in those days, a lot of the studios kept a bass drum and toms, you know, and that were there and mic'd, and other,
Yeah,
drummers that were coming in would bring a trap case with cymbals, pedals, and a snare drum.
yeah,
So
yep.
that could have been that. I don't remember exactly.
But I remember hearing that during those days. That is what you would travel with: your cymbals, your pedal, your Camco or
Yeah,
Gretsch pedal. Yep, and your Ludwig Superphonic.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So that's probably what you used on that track, most
I would
likely, is
think
the
that's
Ludwig.
most likely. Yeah.
Yeah. Now the sound of the drums sound like you. I mean, and that's a lot of it is because it's you, but the tuning, and the Roger Nichols, I think, engineered that session.
No, I
Is it
think it was Bill Schnee.
Bill Schnee? Okay. Okay, engineered that session. Okay. And Gary Katz, of course, produced it.
Right.
Um, so they were, I mean, and that was kind of a sound that a lot of drummers were getting in at that time, that the, really tight or
Right. Well,
yeah,
what I would do is go in and try to get the toms to, to they had been played by other people, so the heads could be stretched out and stuff. They weren't new heads, so just try to get the tones where they were different from each other,
hmm
and where they weren't, triggering the snare drum to rattle, So I would
yeah,
do
yeah,
that, but it was just up to the engineer. It wasn't
right.
like I had a sound that I was going for,
Yeah, yeah,
I just, my whole thing was trying to be comfortable with any of the engineers, because, if you're working together with them, then you develop uh, an attitude of trust, and even if you're not hearing exactly the thing perfectly, you trust that the guy's going to get it. So you make you make compensations.
yeah, yep. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. The question that always comes up, and I see a few people have already asked it, not surprisingly, the stick click, which we talked about. You were on one of my first podcasts 3 years ago. But just so it's settled once and for all. The stick click at the end, during the end of the first solo was an accident. It,
That's yeah, it was
okay,
an accident.
yeah, it's placed so perfectly that it sounds like it's a. You know what I mean? It's just
Yeah, I don't know what I hit, if I hit a mic thing or hit my
or,
other stick, but
yeah, a rim maybe or something. Probably it could be a mic, like you say, because it doesn't really sound like a rim. Um, but anyway, yeah. So that's the second and equally big question is, and if I'll let you answer the question, but the actual version that we all hear that we just listened to, that was the first take after one run through, or that's
I don't, John, I don't really know.
yeah,
I mean, we didn't do it that many times, so, but I don't know how, if they piece things together or, or what it was, but we didn't do it that many times, so it was, there weren't that many takes to choose from.
yeah, yeah. Did you feel when you the couple of times that you played it, um, did it feel really good to you, like kind of out of the gates? Did you feel comfortable?
Yeah, it
You know,
felt,
yeah,
yeah, it just, when I hear the beginning, and it's amazing how it was just, the song played me.
wow, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's because it sounds that way, Steve. Whenever I mean, everybody watching this has probably heard it 10,000 times, and it's got this fresh sound and feel to it. You know what I mean? Like very like it sounds like it's improvised, but also very perfectly orchestrated. Like everybody knows their parts, but it sounds like it has lots of improvisation in terms of how fresh it sounds. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, yeah. When I heard the beginning today, I haven't, really listened, and yeah, it really felt natural.
Yeah,
It didn't feel overplayed. There was a lot of space at the beginning, and there were a lot of weird phrases, and none of it felt forced. It all felt pretty natural and flowing,
yeah.
and
And
it
and
was
when
tricky. I mean, when I hear it back now and listen to how the spaces, and they were tricky little sections,
oh man,
but they made a
absolutely.
lot of sense musically.
Yeah. And we'll get to talking about the drum solos in a second, but when you recorded it, how much of what we hear on the record, musician wise, like it was Chuck Rainey obviously was there with you cutting it live. Was Donald? I know Joe Sample is on it playing piano.
You know what? I don't think Chuck was there when we did it.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I don't. That's the thing I don't remember. Because I was so um, into trying to, get this thing, get set up and hear the thing. And, I was just zeroed in on getting the music where I could see it, getting my gear set up, getting it
Yeah.
hooked up so I could hear what I was going to do. And, and I'm not sure how many guys were there live, how much was pre-recorded. I don't remember all of that. I was just zeroed in on getting the sound in the
Yeah.
phone, knowing what I had to play to.
Right.
Um, Walter and Donald and Walter were there, and Gary and Bill Schnee. Um, Maybe I'm not sure if Larry Carlton was there. I'm sorry. It was
No,
like
that's okay. Um, and so were you playing to a click track on that, or did you just
I don't. You know what? I don't remember. There might have been a click on. I was playing to the track.
yeah, yeah.
Whether there must have been a click.
Hmm.
I mean, they must have had it done to a click.
Yeah. Wow. No, I guess all these years I assumed that at least you and Chuck were there together live, that, that part of it. And then I wondered how much of the rest of the band was put on after. But that's really, I wonder if, maybe we could ask Chuck sometime
Yeah, I don't,
if he was there
I've
before or
heard
after.
different stories, and it's vague to me just because of how crazy my life was, at that time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I was running from one thing to the other, and so, but
Yeah. No, and it was a long time ago, Steve. I know. And I appreciate that you can remember as much as you can, and the amount of work you did were doing in those days too, that to have it. I mean, it shows you how uh, you know big this was for you to even remember as much as you do, because it was such an important track, such an important session.
the beginning part really, everyone always talks about the end, but listening to the beginning today, really, what a
Yeah,
beautiful
it's
composition.
it is absolutely beautiful. Yeah, I mean, it's, if you just played time throughout it, it would have been just as beautiful. I was telling you recently, I heard "Slip Sliding Away," and that's one of my favorite songs that you played on. That's such a beautiful song, just for the, like you're talking about, the space, in the air, and those little cymbal crashes that you do that just kind of seem to float. And
That's
that has,
Paul. Paul, he really works hard on tracks and sounds and not settling for the norm. He's always looking for something different, interesting, and not obtrusive. You know what I mean? So,
yeah,
so
another
yeah,
genius. Yeah, yeah,
he is really.
yeah. And by the way, Rob Wallace is watching, and he said that Gary Katz and Donald Fagen answered that question in the new book about. Presumably, he's talking about the Chuck Rainey, and the things we were just talking about. So everybody, all the more reason to get this book when it comes out. Gadd, A Life in Time, and we'll talk more about that. But thank you, Rob, for letting us know that. So, Steve, speaking of cymbals, back in those days, you played used the same cymbals pretty much in everything you did, right? I mean, that was a huge part of your sound, and those were the Istanbul Ks, the 14s,
Mm-hmm. Hi-hats.
hi hats. Yeah,
Yeah, and I mean, I would get a ride cymbal and play it until it just wore out, and then try to find something else. But I had this prototype Earth ride that I found in Armin's office that he had two of them,
yeah,
and I used both of those until I couldn't use them anymore. Um, uh, And I found, I tried to find gear that worked in different situations.
yeah,
Um, if you have drums that have a tuning range, then you don't have to, have a lot of different sized drums. You can just make the smaller ones sound bigger. And so I found, the the ones that work for me and used them on a lot of different things and just tuned them accordingly.
yeah, yeah. And the crash cymbals that you used during that time, I know the ride originally was a 20-inch, right? And then either that one or at some point it cracked and you cut it down to an 18, or we at
Yeah, I
Zildjian cut it
would
down.
take chunks out of cymbals and try
Yeah.
to, make them last as long as they could. Um, but
Was it like
yeah,
an 18-inch crash? Is that what you
I had an 18-inch ride I used for
ride?
back in the 70s. It was an old K that I found at Frank Ippolito's, and I used it for a long time. There's pictures where it's got a big chunk taken out of
Oh
it.
yeah, sure.
But
Yep.
I kept on trying to save it as long as I could. And then after that one, I started going, I went up to either a 19 or 20-inch ride, and 18-inch crashes. And then I have one 18-inch K thin crash and a 20-inch Constantinople,
Right.
and also a 20-inch orchestra ride, the kind that Elvin used to play.
I remember. Yep. Yep. I remember when you kind of discovered that became your go-to ride at a point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I still play those. So
Yeah. And it's a great crash too, right? I mean, it's got a really nice crash sound to it, nice bell.
it really responds. It's amazing how many different sounds you can get out of a cymbal.
Yeah.
Um, and how the length of the note can affect the feel. You know, so
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, they're great instruments.
So, talking about Asia and some of those songs from that time, um, and I mentioned "Slip Sliding Away," Paul Simon song. There's that crash, that really light sounding crash that you have in a lot of these songs. Is that the ride that you're crashing on? Is that
I'm not
I
sure which one you're talking there, because there was a little sizzle that I used too.
yeah.
I used to like a little sizzle cymbal. Phil Ramone told me that before I went into the sessions with Paul, and I went out and bought one and had it, and sure enough, I pulled it out and I used it on a bunch of things, but I'm not sure if that's the cymbal you're talking about or if it's another one. I'd have to
That
hear it.
I'll bet you're right, Steve. I think thinking about that and slip sliding away, it's probably a sizzle. It's
Yeah,
probably a cymbal with rivets in it, and then I guess like just some of the crashes that you hit during Asia, even they sound like bigger cymbals. Like maybe
yeah.
it's
No, those are like those were like 18-inch Ks or something.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I know we've talked about this many times where you would play the cymbals as they were meant to be played. You didn't play, a cymbal didn't have to be called a ride or a crash. You crashed on the same cymbal that you might ride on, and you rode on the same cymbal you might crash. And that's
Yeah,
how.
I
Yeah,
mean, yeah,
yeah,
there's a lot of you can get a lot musically out of the cymbals. You know what I mean? Just by where you hit it, using the bell, using the side of the stick,
yeah,
holding the stick on the cymbal after you hit it. There's so many things that that they can do.
yeah, yeah. Um, I just want to. I'm going to take a second and talk about the solos. And I mean, a lot of drummers, especially, obviously fixate on how great those two sections are, and those were completely improvisational, right? I mean, those parts weren't written. You were allowed to just go.
No, they just asked me. That was one of the things that I think when I first played the track, the thing that wasn't right about it was I didn't get crazy at the end, because the whole track was so orchestrated. It just didn't feel natural to.
Yeah,
There was no sax solo there then, and so I was just trusting their their knowledge of what they were going for, and trying to give them what they were asking for,
yeah, yeah.
which was
I was going to play just a little bit more of it, Steve. There's this solo, and um, there's a stick click. Yeah. Beautiful. Wow. And so I think you've already said this, Steve, so forgive me if I'm asking you something you've already said, but the drum solo parts, you just redid the whole song with the, you didn't add those later. That wasn't something that they had you come back and do. It was all contained.
No, I think we did another take and did the end a little, as I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, I feel like that's how you've explained it before, that they said, let's do another one and, go
And,
crazy, go more
yeah,
crazy.
we wanted to be, a little bit more crazy at the end.
Yeah. And when you finished that session, did you feel that you had done something really special and unique? Did you kind of,
I mean, I felt that in those at that particular in those years of recording and playing music, it was good because I had the feeling that I had given somebody what they were looking for.
yeah,
You know what I mean? And that's a very rewarding feeling. You know what I mean?
absolutely. Yeah.
That's inspirational to be able to give someone, what they've been searching for.
Yeah.
It's nice.
Well, and I know you well, and I could see you being happy that they were happy. That's
The goal. That's the whole goal, is to go in there and help the music be the best that it can,
Yeah. And do you have any recollection? This is one of my crazy questions, but like, how long after that you actually heard the finished track? I mean, you got to hear a playback probably that night, whenever the session was that day, but then you heard it later with Wayne.
With Wayne on it. Yeah, oh yeah,
Yeah.
it was like incredible.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was incredible. I
And
used to hear it a lot on the radio.
yeah, I still hear it too. I mean, they still play it. I mean, you still
But I
hear
mean,
it.
back when it first came out, they were playing that a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, there's nothing like it, and there never will be anything like it. It's so, yeah, such an amazing composition, piece of music.
Yeah, thank you,
Yeah.
Donald and Walter, wherever you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, Steve, we're wrapping it up here. You've made this really easy.
Good morning.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No. Well, Steve, I thank you so much for doing this today. This has been great. I want to thank everybody for watching today. We could go on, and I want to save having you on for another episode of Track Talk for another Steve Gadd iconic track. So we'll wish everybody a great day and thank everybody for watching today. Big hand for Steve Gadd.
Thank you, Harvey. Thanks, guys. Thanks, John.
My pleasure.
It's a pleasure, man. Thank you.
Likewise, Steve-O. Can you hang on for 1 second, Steve? We'll say goodbye
Let me ask you something. I'm looking at you. I'm looking at me. And who does your makeup? You look fabulous, Johnny.
Thanks, Steve.
I look a little weathered here. I don't know what.
No, it's this great light I have and my makeup team.
All right, I'm hanging.
Okay, hang out for 1 second. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'll see you again real soon for another episode of Track Talk and live from my drum room. And again, a big hand for my dear friend Steve Gadd, my hero, and happy 98th birthday to Roy Haynes.
Ooh, happy birthday, Roy.
Yeah, and keep an eye out for Steve's book, available on Hudson Music, through Hudson Music, coming soon. All right, thanks for watching, everybody. See you soon. Thanks for watching this episode of Track Talk with Steve Gadd. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel so you never miss an episode, and I'll see you next time. Thanks very much. Over and out. Peace.